Good morning, Blaine Memorial. This morning I want to read you a scripture from the Gospel of Matthew. This passage comes from chapter 7, and it's verses 24 through 27. Everybody who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise builder who built a house on bedrock. The rain fell, the floods came, and the wind blew and beat against that house. It didn't fall because it was firmly set on bedrock. But everybody who hears these words of mine and doesn't put them into practice will be like a fool who built a house on sand. The rain fell, the floods came, and the wind blew and beat against that house. It fell and was completely destroyed. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. When I was a young boy, I grew up in a house that had a large wooded lot behind it that was not developed. After school, my older sister and I often liked to go over into those woods and play in the afternoons. We had an entire imaginary society back there. And one day we decided we wanted to build ourselves forts that would serve as our homes in the different games we played. So as we were looking for spots to construct our forts, my sister found a spot where a large tree had fallen over. It left a hole in the ground with the roots sticking up on one side and large shrubbery all around the back of the tree. She said, "I want to build my fort here." And I remember thinking, that's an odd spot to build a fort. It's not very beautiful. It's sort of overgrown, difficult to get into. I thought that was not the best decision. On the other hand, I found a large oak tree near the center of the lot. They casted down shade over the woods and kept any shrubs from growing underneath it. I said, "This is a beautiful spot. I'll build my fort here and enjoy this gorgeous oak tree, and I'll have plenty of room to do the work that I need to do." Well, as the days went on and we picked up construction and started working on our forts, I quickly realized that I was having to plant stakes in the ground to hold the different walls that I was building up. And oftentimes when the rain came, they would wash my stakes out of the ground and my fort would fall to pieces. On the other hand, my sister was using the natural resources all around her, the shrubs and the fallen over tree, to build her fort. Those plants were rooted deeply into the ground, so when the weather changed, her fort remained stable and firm. It's interesting, as I was reading this scripture this morning and thinking about that old story, I looked at another one of my favorite resources, this book, How to Stay Alive in the Woods. And I opened it up to read this section about making shelter, if you ever need to make shelter in the woods. It's interesting, the very first paragraph says here, "Find a place to build a shelter where you can use the natural resources around you. By using what's already around you, you will save yourself energy and your shelter will stand more firmly." I guess my sister was ahead of the game when we were children, and I still had a lot to learn. It's interesting, today's scripture talks about putting the words of Christ into practice. The lessons and the teachings that we've been given by Christ are the resources we have to build firm foundations in our lives. The words of Christ last forever. The teachings of Christ will sustain us through all hard days, through every season, and through any instance of trouble. Today I encourage you to lean into the resources that Christ has already offered us. Dig into Scripture and pray genuinely. Look for what Christ is calling you to do. Because in following Christ, we're building our lives on a firm foundation that's sure to last through the storm. And have a good morning.